Yeah.
Say we get into who booked this shit because there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah. Who booked this shit?
So we have a new director. All right.
We do.
Miller's out of
But
here,
not
brother.
new to us.
Huh?
Joseph Zito, he's not new to us. He directed The Prowler.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. He's not new to us, brother.
Retro Blood, episode 85. It's in the archives. Listen to it. It's a great movie.
Brother. That is a great movie. And you can tell, like, some of the shots were pretty similar. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
But, you know, I like it when a director has, like, their own style and stuff.
Yes.
So, but yes, he did The Prowler and everything. So he is the man tasked to do this final chapter of Friday the 13th, brother.
Yes.
So
there'll never be another one.
There will never be another one. So here's the let's just get into the drama part of it.
Yeah,
so
let's do it.
All y'all thinking, like, because we're doing this shit in real time. All right, we're not looking about, you know, what's in the future, brother. We're happy about what's happening now, what we're reviewing.
Nah, we're no bullshit.
Yeah. So, you know, you're thinking, well, fuck. I mean, last week you said that was just a trilogy. Shouldn't we be done then?
Yeah.
Well, the thing was,
should be.
Well, hold on, guys. Okay, we said it was a trilogy. We never said the shit was ending. Okay.
No.
And that's basically what they were saying. They're like, oh, okay, guys. Yeah, that's number 3, and it looked like Jason got axed to the head, but we never said it was the end. It wasn't in the title, brother. It wasn't booked.
Right.
Okay.
No, it wasn't booked. And it turns out this movie made a whole lot of money, so let's make another one and let's make a fourth one. A final one.
So, have you ever heard of this guy, Frank? I'm going to fuck up his last name. Frank Mancuso Jr.?
Mancuso, yeah. Frank Mancuso Jr. was the producer on the Friday the 13th, some of the Friday the 13th movies.
So apparently he was a little butthurt, okay? That Paramount, nobody gave him his credit for producing these movies. So we've heard this before. If you're a wrestling fan, you probably heard of this before, and I'll explain this. So basically he was butthurt because he got all, you know, the Friday movies are a big hit. Like, you know, they made a lot of money. You know, we're doing really good with these series right now in the 80s, and it's getting pretty, you know, popular. But it's one of those things where, well, the network, it doesn't look fancy. You know what I mean? It's like the network's like, do we really want to be known for, like, the Jason guy? You know what I mean? And for wrestling fans, it could be the same way, because when you have a network, you know, especially back in the days in the 90s and stuff like TNT or USA, well, we have wrestling's being our highest program. But do we really want to be known as a wrestling company? You know? So that's what's kind of happening. So Paramount also, too, it's reported that there were, you know, they could tell that the slasher genre was, like, going a little downhill. You know what I mean?
It was.
And it was to a degree, I would say. To be honest with you, it probably stopped being popular probably around this time, like probably like around, I would say maybe like 1985, and didn't really pick up momentum until Scream came out.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on how you look at it. So there's a couple of different ways to look at it. So one thing I was going to mention about this movie is, to me, in my mind, there's like a cutoff point to where Friday the 13th was dark and scary and grimy and dirty and gruesome. Yeah. And part 4, final chapter, is still in that. And so is part 5. But after that, you know, it becomes the Jason as a superhero. You know, Jason as the unstoppable thing. The thing, when you start pulling for Jason to kill people instead of like being horrified that Jason's killing people, then there's something wrong.
Yeah, it's kind of
you
going
know what I mean?
Yeah. And Halloween would also go to that realm as well.
It would do the same thing. So we were getting to the point where they maybe getting popular, like more people were going to see them, but they were starting to go see them to see Jason kill people instead of getting the visceral effect of being terrified by this killer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was kind of like losing its power.
But it was also too making
is the way I would look at it.
They were also making more characters like pawns compared to making them like characters.
Right. And this movie has a lot of that. This movie has a lot of like fake ass characters that don't seem real. When the kids in Friday the 13th Part 2 seem real. They seem like real kids. And Part 3 seems like real kids. This movie just seems like a bunch of made up bullshit kids that somebody in their 40s or 50s in 1984 would think kids would be like.
Yes, but
and I'll point some of those things out as we go.
Yes.
But yeah, it just seems like it's full of shit.
Well,
kinda.
see, that's why I like the show, because we have a little mixed view. I think that this was a little bit of both. So I agree with you that, like I was saying in the beginning, we basically had kids as pawns just show up there to have sex and get killed by Jason. That was the premise of why they were booked on this movie. But I thought they did. I thought they did actually pretty well with some of the characters, making us like them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Not all of them, but some. When you point out your point, I'll point out my point on the review.
That's fine. Yeah, we'll do a counterpoint.
We'll do a counterpoint, brother. Speaking of counterpoint, guess who they brought back? All right, they brought back our boy Tom Savini.
They did.
He did all the makeup and the gore. You could tell, definitely. So there are a couple things about this. So obviously, Tom, he was on the original Friday the 13th. He did all the prosthetics and all the kills, and he was actually the guy who did the whole makeup of Jason. I think he's the one that recommended them having Jason on there too. So
he kind of created Jason.
Yeah. So he didn't come back for 2 or 3, but they were like, hey, do you want to come back for number 4? Do you want to kill off? Because like we were saying, this movie was supposed to kill off the Jason character, and it was supposed to kill off the series. All right.
Yeah.
So the big thing was the Paramount they could see the trend of slasher movies not being there anymore. They don't want to be known for the horror movie network. They're like, can we get rid of this shit? And since this guy, Frank over here, since his dad owns the fucking place, just give him the rights and he'll produce the shit. We'll get it.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to point out was Frank Mancuso's dad, Frank Mancuso Sr., was like one of the big executives at Paramount.
Yes. So they're like, let's just give him this movie, make the movie, get it out of there, did the final chapter, say that's going to be the end, and be good. So, and actually, it was pretty cool that the writer and the director pretty much had free range of the whole movie, how they actually wanted to book it. They just needed to have 2 things, and that's, make it the final and the title, and then kill off Jason at the end. That was their main goal of the whole movie, and then they could kind of just fill in the blanks. Because, we've been seeing that every Friday since number 2 has all new characters. Like, we have new people all the time. I mean, fuck. You know what I mean? It's like, and I think that's going to be a trend that we'll see, supposedly, in the alternative universe when we have more Jason films or something. A year ago. Okay, so, yes. So, a couple of things on here, too, is... So, the film was originally scheduled to be released in October, but it was pushed back until like I said, April 13, 1984. Upon its theatrical release. So the film grossed $303 million in the U.S. on a budget of $2.2 million. So this is still a hot franchise at the particular time. And it was the fourth most attended of the Friday the 13th series, with approximately 9,815,700 tickets sold. So, it pretty much like the 4th highest grossing Jason movie, and it's the 4th one. There you go. So let's see. Okay, so some of the stuff I wanted to talk about here.
Wait,
go ahead.
The highest, like it didn't do better than 3, did it?
No,
I mean, it did better than 3, right?
Oh, I think it might have done better than 3.
Yeah, I think 3 was the one where it was like, oh, this is kind of failing.
Yeah. So there's 2 people I want to talk about here too on the show. I want to highlight the actors when we can. The first one is obviously we have Tommy himself, Mr. 80s star Corey Feldman. And what's interesting about this one is they picked him because he had acting experience, and obviously he was a good child actor, Yeah.
But
it is interesting to see him right before the Goonies. You know what I mean? Because that was like his big movie.
Right, the Goonies was like the next year, right? And he was also in Gremlins, which came out the same year.
Yes, and of course when we first talked about Corey Feldman on the podcast is when we did the Lost Boys, because he was on there as well too. So he was all over.
A couple years later.
Yeah, I think it was like '87 when he did that movie. So he was all over the '80s, man. But this is like one of his first ones being on this, And the twist with his character, we'll talk about that when we do the review, is pretty interesting for the time period too. And I thought it was a pretty good idea that probably would have went somewhere, but you know how it is. We gotta do everything a little different. And the other guy I want to talk about is, and I always forget he's in this movie, but it's so funny seeing him because a year later he would go on to do his probably biggest movie too, which would be one Crispin Glover, who that we know from Back to the Future, brother. Okay, when he played George McFly, Marty's dad. There.
So he was relatively unknown.
Yeah.
When this movie came out, just like Kevin Bacon was.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So he was, like I said, he did a couple films before this one, only like 2. He only did like 2, like the Racing with the Moon and My Tutor. But this is like his 3rd movie. All right. And then, he would have 2 more. And then that's when he would get that big role in Back to the Future. And that's kind of like where he actually won his first award for Best Supporting Actor at that time as well. So that's pretty much where he made his name. But it's very interesting to see him on here. And you know what? Like, for like the character that he was on here, I actually thought he was pretty good. Like of all the kids, you know what I mean? You could tell that this guy was like, okay, you know what? This guy might have something here. You know what I mean? He had like this like natural charisma about him that I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like Crispin Glover is someone who, like I know him obviously from Back to the Future. But I think I first discovered him in this movie called At Close Range, which is a James Foley film with Christopher Walken and Sean Penn that's really, really good. He was also in one of my favorite movies of all time, which we might end up doing on the show one day, called River's Edge. But that wouldn't be for another couple of years. Those were in 1986. So he was still like this kid who was like trying to make it as an actor. And you could tell so Crispin Glover gets later on in his career, he gets this I don't know how to describe it, but he gets like this Crispin Glover thing. Like he always acts like himself.
Yeah.
Kind of like not Jack Nicholson. I can't think of the actor I'm thinking of. But anyway, he kind of always like he's obviously playing a different character, but he plays all the different characters the same way. So he would get this weirdo like kind of vibe that he was always like playing Crispin Glover. Like even in The Doors, when he played Andy Warhol, he was still being Crispin Glover. But he hadn't quite developed that yet. He was still like a kind of relatively normal person during this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, he's like one of his first movies he was doing, but I still thought he did you could see like later on he would take some of the stuff that like the mannerisms that he does, he would take that to later films.
Yes.
So when it comes to like the filming conditions over here, so we were filming this around October 1983 to January 1984 in Topanga Canyon in Newhall, California.
Yep.
So like I was saying before, it was originally supposed to be released in October of 1984. But Frank, he was like, no, it didn't work for me, brother. Let's move it to April 13th. Said leaving them only 6 weeks to complete post-production. And apparently, the only time that Paramount helped with this film's production, is when they rented a house in Malibu for the filmmakers to stay and conduct editing sessions with food brought to them by the studio. Just imagine that. They're like, all right, we don't...
So it actually came out early?
Yeah. It came out early, yeah.
So because I was thinking when you said October, they were supposed to be in October of 1983.
No, 1984.
There's no Friday. Yeah, okay. So there's no Friday the 13th movie in 1983.
Yeah.
They just skipped that year, and then so it actually came out early. Okay.
Yeah, it came out early. Yeah. So originally it was set to be released in October. Obviously because October season's the Friday the 13th film. Most people are more like to watch horror movies in October. But they're like, that don't work for me, brother. This is a camp. We got to get this shit. You could tell at this time, though, like they just want... Now, I wouldn't say that the filmmakers or the director, Joseph or nothing, but you could tell like the company just wanted to get this shit over with. They're just like, let's release this shit. We got this guy what he wanted. Just release it. And we just want to move away from the, at this time, we want to move away from the horror, or at least the Friday the 13th series, slasher.